the time has come, my friends. Time has come. We are wrapping up the book of Genesis. We covered, just through my transcription alone, just about 20 pages over the last 2-ish weeks. So fantastic. We are towards the end. This session is going to be a little bit longer, but it is covering basically an entirety of a single narrative. That's why I'm grouping it all as one. Plus, with the speed that we've been getting through everything else, it's just, it's not going to be super extensive. We'll try to just kind of wind through it without talking too much in between. So I added a lot of detail that helps set the tone and the place of each section in this. But before we get into it, let's go ahead and read a quote. Let's talk about this quote here. They never forgot that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course. Anyhow, in a corner, some untidy spot, where dogs go on with their doggy life, and the torturer's horse scratches its innocent behind on a tree. Only God can tell the saintly from the suburban. Counterfeit values always resemble the true. Neither in life nor art is honesty bohemian. The free behave much as the respectable do. This is a New Year letter written in 1941, also by Adin, 1907 to 1973. So I just like this part that stood out. Only God can tell the saintly from the suburban. And then how counterfeit values always resemble the true. Neither in life nor art is honesty bohemian. The free behave much as the respectable do. So everybody is living together here on earth with different values, different perceptions, and everybody's, even though they're so different, they seem so alike and so similar, and it's true that only God can tell the difference between like somebody who is chosen and somebody who is not, and the reason behind it. But we'll learn that there's some future telling from when these older patriarchs are on their deathbed. They're able to kind of foresee the future, and they're able to predict, where their family line is going to go. We'll learn that towards the end of this reading. So, but they're getting their messaging from God, because at their deathbed, at the time of death, the veil is very thin, and it's easy to go ahead and predict and see, especially as a parent, right? You can kind of determine how your children's life is going to go based off of the way they were when they were kids. But yes, just a little moody quote again by Adin. We're going to finish up Genesis. This is part 12, and where we ended, Isaac had passed away. So we ended where Isaac had passed. We talked a little bit about Esau's family line. Now we're going to go right into Jacob and learn, what happens to him and his sons. And if you are familiar with these stories, Jacob had 12 sons, or 12 tribes of Israel. Basically started a good heap of the Hebrew nation just with his 12 tribes, and continued it through his 12 tribes. So we're going to learn about, specifically one of them, but everybody is going to be filtered in at some point. So these are, again, Jacob's 12 sons. So let's go ahead and just begin. Chapter 37. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. Now Israel loved Joseph. And when I say Israel, to remember that Jacob was also known as Israel. That was his second God-given name. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Okay. And Joseph says, he replied, I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks? They have moved on from here, the man answered. I heard them say, let's go to Dothan. But they saw him in the distance, and before they reached him, they plotted to kill him. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites who took him to Egypt. So wonderful. We hear a little bit about Joseph's talent and his God-given gift, that he's able to foresee the future and he's able to see, really interpret dreams, right? But he also has a little bit of that future-telling gift that we had spoken about. But yes, he has a little bit of that in there, and he's really just foretelling and foreshadowing what is about to happen here with these grain sheaves, right? It's very, very interesting how it just lines up exactly. But his brothers are like, what the heck, he thinks he's better than us, and blah, 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 and they sold him to slavery. But Judah, keep in mind, Judah actually kind of saved Joseph in a way and protected his life, because otherwise they were just going to kill him, which would have not turned out good for anyone. That could have been the end of everything, as we will learn. So now we go into Judah. Judah got a wife for Er, his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Er, Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the Lord's sight. So the Lord put him to death. So, yes, Judah is having children, and they keep dying. His 2 sons actually died, and his daughter died as well. So Tamar kind of is a widow, right? She is a widow. She's off on her own, and Judah invites her into the house and to live as a widow. But she kind of likes to go off and do her own thing, and something happens, of course, right? There's always some kind of drama. When Judah saw her, which is Tamar, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face. Not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to the roadside and said, "Come now, let me sleep with you." And Tamar says, "And what will you give me to sleep with you?" she asked. He says, "I'll send a young goat from my flock." He said, "What pledge should I give you?" She asked for some proof, like, how do I know you're going to give me a goat? She's smart, and she says, "Your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand," she answered. So she gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. When the time came for her to give birth, there were twin boys in her womb. And as she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. So the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it on his wrist and said, "This one came out first." But when he drew back his hand, his brother came out. And she said, "This is how you have broken out." And he was named Perez. And then his brother, who had the scarlet thread on his wrist, came out, and he was named Zerah. So we don't hear too much about Perez and Zerah, but we can get a little bit of understanding on how Judah's life is going, right? He's just in a bundle of confusion. His children keep dying. He sleeps with his daughter-in-law unknowingly, right? And it actually turns out that people were telling Judah, Tamar is a prostitute. And he gets angry, and he is actually demanding that she be put to death. But I think she came up with this thing. She still had the staff and the seal of Judah, and she's basically like, "Hello, I have these things. It was actually you that took advantage of me," whatever. Anyways, so she had a back plot just to save her own life. But she has the twins, and again, we don't talk too much about this, but this part here, where the twin, if people have twins, they tie the ribbon around the first one to say, okay, this is the one that's coming first. But this same thing happened with Esau and Jacob. So Esau and Jacob were technically twins. Esau was technically the older one. And what had happened was Jacob was the one that put his arm out first. But he did the same thing. He pulled his arm back, and Esau was the one who was technically born first. So the whole drama between Jacob and Esau this whole time of kind of demanding his birthright from Esau, he's like saying that he was really the older one because he stuck his hand out first and all of this stuff. He just had like an internal knowing. But it turns out Jacob was given that birthright, and he was given the blessing, even if it was in a form of deception. Jacob was really the honored one, being the firstborn, but Esau was looked at through most of his life as the older one. But it's just funny how history repeats itself, because the same thing is happening with these twins. And I want to say there's another moment in here where this happens, twins, and like they're fighting each other to come out first. It's just an interesting memento. Excuse me. Let's go on. Now Joseph had been taken to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who is one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. So we learned this Potiphar is different, I think, than her father-in-law, but I think, again, it's just like a proper term for an official of the Pharaoh, and then also being from the region of Potiphar. Now Joseph was well-built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns he has entrusted in my care." The wife gets offended, obviously, she's taken aback. And then she told everyone this story. "That Hebrew slave you brought to us came to me to make sport out of me." Basically saying, oh, he tried to have sex with me, whatever, tried to take advantage of me. Because he ran away, and she grabbed his cloak, and she had the proof, right? So Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, and the chief cupbearer. Let me fix this typo here. So Joseph is in prison. Joseph is in prison, and then Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. So he asks Pharaoh's officials, who are in custody with him, "Why do you look so sad today?" So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine there were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." "This is what it means," Joseph said to him. "The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift your head up and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to when you were his cup-bearer." When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head there were 3 baskets of bread. In the top baskets were all kinds of baked goods for the Pharaoh, but the birds were eating out of the basket on my head. This is what this means," Joseph said. Okay. "The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Crazy. The Pharaoh, restored the chief cupbearer to his position after 3 days, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to him in his interpretation. So while Joseph, here he goes again, interpreting the dreams, but they're almost, I don't know how to say that word, interpreting the dreams, but they're almost like he really takes the symbolism and then predicts the future. He's, given the images, right, and assigning them to certain timelines. And then he's also using whatever feeling that he gets from the dream to predict or see what's about to happen, and he's pretty much spot on with everything, which is interesting. definitely gifted. And he told the cupbearer, he's like, hey, when you get out, remember me, tell the Pharaoh about me, and tell him that I'm favored and he should let me out. And, that was his thing. But the cupbearer kind of forgot about it for a while, because it says here, when 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. So he was basically confined in the jail for 2 years. Crazy. Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile, went out of the river, and came out of the river. There came 7 cows. Went out. I'm just gonna say went out to the river. There came 7 cows, sleek and fat. They grazed among the reeds. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy heads, and then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. So this is just a little fuzzy portion of the dream, but he's going to tell it in full to Joseph. So essentially, I skipped some of this part here because it's a lot of back and forth. But the cupbearer, once Pharaoh is telling his dream to everybody, the cupbearer remembers, oh yeah, Joseph actually will be able to tell you what exactly that means. 2 years later, right, it comes in handy. And he reminds him of Joseph. But yeah, nobody was able to explain it. It's very confusing, right? I wouldn't even know how to interpret it, to be quite honest. But knowing the backstory, it seems pretty interesting and clear. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream I was standing on the bank of the Nile, went out of the river, and there came up 7 cows, fat and sleek. They grazed among the reeds. After them 7 other cows came up, scrawny and very ugly and lean. I have never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they'd ate them, no one could tell that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before. Then I woke up. And this is the part 2. He had another dream. In my dream I saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came afterwards are 7 years, and so were the 7 worthless heads of grain, scorched by the east winds. They are 7 years of famine. So essentially he says, yes, there will be 7 plentiful years, and then there will be 7 dreadful famine years that will really, destroy everything. So everybody kind of went into a panic. They automatically believed Joseph, which is in good faith. And they went into a panic, and they were trying to figure out a plan of how they were going to provide during these 7 years of famine. So Joseph actually came up with a plan to take a portion of each of the harvest for these 7 years and store it and save it for the 7 years of famine. So he comes up with this plan, and the plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? So Pharaoh was very pleased. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made this all known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. So wonderful. Joseph is put in charge, really and fully. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. When famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold the grain to the Egyptians. For the famine was severe throughout Egypt, and all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. Wild. Sorry, nose itch for, I guess sometimes when I put the lotion on my face, I don't know what happened. It's very itchy. But when I start itching, I can't stop. Anywho, the famine was not just in Egypt. Famine had spread all through the surrounding areas. So again, people were coming to Egypt from everywhere. So it kind of became like a Mecca and a safe haven. People were at least not settling in Egypt because nobody could really stay, but they would come to buy the grain and then come out. But it did become like a hot point at that time. But anyways, when Jacob learned, so now backtrack a little bit. Jacob is older now, of course, right? And he doesn't even know where Joseph is. He assumes he's dead. I'm going to go back to this land of Jacob here. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other?" He continued. "I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." As soon as Joseph, okay, so just, skip down to it. So they journey to Egypt, right? And Joseph is there, being the dealer of the grain. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he asked. "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." So he essentially presumes them all spies. He's kind of playing it tough with them. He's like, well, why are you here? You must be spies. Just being completely irrational and ridiculous with them. So he put them in custody for 3 days. Then Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and put each man's silver back in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. After this was done for them, they loaded their grain and their donkeys and left. And so, yes, they took off. They were just kind of like confused and whatever. At the place where they stopped for the night, one of them opened the sack to get feed for the donkey, and he saw his silver in the mouth of the sack. And it's just ironic how they're perceiving this, right? They're like, "My silver has been returned," he said to his brothers. "Here it is in my sack." Their hearts sank, and they turned to each other trembling and said, "What is this that God had done to us?" So they think it's some kind of like trick, like this, some kind of like magic trick. And Joseph's just being really sly. The 20 shekels of silver that they sold him for, he basically put 20 shekels each in everybody's bag. So it's just kind of hilarious that had taken place, and he thinks he's so funny, ha ha ha. But they're confused. They're not making the connection whatsoever that that's Joseph. They're just like, "What is this?" And they're trying to think back to that time, but they just can't do it. They're not fully coming into any kind of recollection. Yes, so so basically, okay, they go back to Jacob, their father, and they're basically like running back to him with their tails in between their legs, saying, Dad, this is what happened. The man who is lord over to the land said to us, "This is how I know whether you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers here with me, and take the food for your starving households and go. But bring your youngest brother to me, so that I know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will give your brother back to you, and you can trade in the land." So basically, I did skip out a lot of parts there, but a lot of the conversation. But Joseph was saying, like, how is your father? He was asking them very personal questions. And he also found out that Jacob had another young son, even younger than Joseph, who is Benjamin, right? So he's saying, okay, well, I want to see Benjamin. Jacob doesn't know about him yet, so he wanted to see him. So he's saying, bring Benjamin back, so I know that, like, what you're saying to me is legit, and then whatever, just making the excuses here. As they were emptying their sacks, there in each man's sack was a pouch of silver. And when their father saw the money pouches, they were frightened. Their father Jacob said to them, "You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, Simon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me." Jacob is not having it. Then Reuben said to his father, "You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Entrust him to my care, and I will bring him back." So the sons are eager to go back. They're eager to, see what the case is with this mysterious Joseph, this mysterious man. and they want to build a good relationship so they can keep coming to get grain, because there really was no food anywhere. It was a very challenging time. They replied, "The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living?" he asked us. "Do you have another brother?" We simply answered his questions. How were we to know what he would say, or how were we to know he would say, "Bring your brother down here"? So the man took the gifts and the double amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. So essentially Jacob's like, okay, well, this is probably some serious thing. So he's like, take honey, take spices, take whatever you can, present them. You can go ahead and take Benjamin. Just please do not let anyone lay a finger on him, right? He's very special to Jacob. So they took gifts and they took more silver, just to appease this mysterious Egyptian ruler, right? When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of the house, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal. They are to eat with me at noon." So Joseph is becoming more impressed and more kind-hearted, right? He's just, actually really happy to see them, but he doesn't want to give them everything yet, And the man did as Joseph told him and took them into Joseph's house. He asked them how they were, and then he said, "How is your aged father you told me about? Is he still living?" So he's just, inquiring. It's been a while. So now Joseph gave these instructions to the steward of the house. "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of his sack. Then put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest one's sack." Oh no. So he's still plotting, right? He's trying to get them to come back. Then in the mouth of the youngest one's sack, along with silver for his grain. And the steward did as Joseph said. So basically, he frames Benjamin. He frames Benjamin. He frames Benjamin, and he's like searching through their things, and he's like, "You stole my cup," right? But they said to him, "Why does my lord say such things? Far be it for your servants to do anything like that." But Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who is found to have the cup will become my slave, and the rest of you go back to your father in peace." So he knew Benjamin was precious because he didn't come with them the first time. He's still fairly young, I would assume, but anyways, he's wanting to keep Benjamin there, right, for whatever reason, to cause panic. He knows that, something is up. Your servant, my father has said to us, my wife bore me 2 sons. One of them went away from me, and I said, he has surely been torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you will bring my gray head down to the grave in misery. So they're telling him, please don't, our father will kill us. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one that you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourself for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God had sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God had sent me ahead of you to prepare for you a remnant on earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Wonderful. The nose is just not going to stop. I apologize. Just, ignore. Pay attention to the words. Anyways, he had one more trick up his sleeve, which was to frame Benjamin, cause them all in a panic. And he's like, all right, let me just come clean. You guys are fine, and I'm not even mad. He probably was a little bit mad to put them through all of that up and down roller coaster type of vibe. But anyways, he's like, it's fine. This is great. You see the life that I'm living here. I'm the ruler of Egypt. It's no big deal. And he really is like saving not only Egypt, but the nations surrounding because of his forethought and his planning. He saved a lot of lives, if not the whole line of Jacob and, everybody else. It would have been super, super bad. So we see how, some bad deeds or some challenges and really unfortunate events, like being sold into slavery, is terrible, but you could see how it can become a part of a greater master plan and a fruitful delivery. But anyways, they hug and they are all like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it." And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers to do this. Load your animals and return to the land of Canaan, and bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best land of Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land." So Pharaoh is a nice guy. He appreciates that everything that Jacob is doing for the land, and Joseph is doing for the land, and Joseph is really turning Egypt into this hot spot, into this Mecca, right? This it's becoming built up, and it's just they're collecting a lot of money too, a lot of silver, a lot of everything, so they're really making it look really nice. Pharaoh is saying, "You did a great job. Tell your whole family to come here. They could be wealthy just like you." I mean, they were wealthy, but they could live in a lush environment. So they went out of Egypt, and they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan. They told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he's the ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned, and he did not believe them. Oh, goodness, you guys. Sorry. My nose, what is going on? I need to know why this happens. It's so weird. It's just very itchy. Never really happens except for when I'm doing the videos. Oh, goodness. Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when they told him everything Joseph had said to them, and when they saw the carts that Joseph had sent to carry them back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. So, of course, they came back with a bunch of stuff, a bunch of gifts, things, right? And Jacob was like, "Okay, wow, this is amazing. This is absolutely incredible. What do we do now, right? What's next?" And Jacob's getting up there, by the way, but he lives a good life. We will learn about that. Okay. Jacob brought with him to Egypt his sons and his grandsons and his daughters and granddaughters, all of his offspring. With the two sons that had born, with the two sons who had been born to Joseph in Egypt, the members of Jacob's family, which went to Egypt, were 70 in all. So 777, we all know 7 is a blessed number. 70 people were just the clan of Jacob. 70 people, including Joseph's two sons, who were Egyptian and Hebrew together. And we learned yesterday in our bonus knowledge who those two were, but again, they will come up a little bit later. And mind you, we are on chapter 46, goes up to chapter 50, I believe. Chapter 50. We're almost done with this riveting tale, right? So let's go ahead and continue. Chapter 47. Then Jacob brought his father, Then Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of pilgrimage of my fathers." So that's an interesting point, because he's 130 years old already, not even really that close to his actual death. I think he actually dies a few years after this. But anyways, 130 years old, and he says, that wasn't anything compared to my fathers, right? They lived hundreds and hundreds of years. So 130 was a short life for them back then. Just to give some perspective. Then we kind of move on a little bit. They go and settle in basically the best land of Egypt. They're all settled there. There is no food, however, and the whole region, because the famine was severe, both Egypt and Canaan, wasted away because of the famine. So people of Egypt and from the surrounding areas brought their livestock to Joseph and gave them food in exchange for their horses, their sheep and goats, their cattle and donkeys, and he brought them through that year with food in exchange for all their livestock. So people at a certain point, they just started running out of money. They started running out of silver. So they started to trade their animals, and this is not mentioned in my transcription, but they started to also trade their land. So basically, unbeknownst to them, they kind of became in servitude at this point. So people started trading their land. They started trading anything they could to get them fed, right? So they kind of became, I forget the word for it, but just, in servitude. This is kind of how Hebrews became servants or slaves in Egypt, to be honest. But anyways, now Israelites settled in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Sometime later, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, along with him. Then Jacob is talking on his deathbed. He says, "As I, Jacob, was returning from Paddan to my sorrow, Rachel died in the land of Canaan when we were still on the way, a little distance from Ephrath. So I buried her beside the road to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem." So we learned where Rachel died, where Leah died. We learned where Isaac and Rebecca died. So Abraham died. Everybody was kind of buried in one spot, which is now Bethlehem, which is why that is like the holy city, right? So everybody was settled there. So he's telling Jacob, "This is where I want to be buried," and he's starting to bless. He sees Joseph. He's telling Joseph, blah blah blah. He sees Joseph's kids too, and now he's going to go ahead and bless them. When Joseph saw his father placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he was displeased. So he took a hold of his father's hand and moved it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. So Manasseh was technically the oldest, right? I don't think this was a twin situation where they were like neck and neck fighting each other to come out first. Because I guess it mattered, who's the older, who's the youngest. It mattered more than it does today. Of course, we all play the cards. All of our children are born equally. We love them both equally, but sometimes that's true, sometimes it's not true. But we play the card. But back in this day, especially, the oldest was definitely considered to have more of a blessing. But they were switching it up. But Joseph is like, oh well, is Jacob confused? Is he, doing that on purpose? But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he will become great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." So this is another example of how the history, even the most recent history, repeats itself, because the same thing happened with Jacob and Esau. Jacob was the younger brother, and he became, Jacob was the younger brother, and he became the larger successor, right? The more honorable man instead of Esau, even though Esau was older. And I guess we can see this in Joseph as well. He was one of the younger brothers. He was second to the youngest brother, and he became, the greatest. So it's not all about age or who comes first, who comes last, what have you. It's really comes down to the way that God sees it, which ties in perfectly with our quote. Only God can tell, who is the righteous, who is not the righteous. And your parents might have a good idea, but they're going to have just more of the perception on how you grew up and like how you were as children compared to, what's happening. And they can, parents are cool too, but God really has the first knowledge of, okay, yes, righteous, and you guys can work itself out. Oh, my nose. So embarrassing. I'm sorry. We're going to just ignore it. We're going to power through it because we're almost done. Okay, just a few more times here. Then Jacob called for his sons and said, "Gather around so I can tell you what will happen to you in the days to come." So basically in this portion he goes in on everybody. Not some kids he says nice things to, but he goes in all of his 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Jacob, and basically says like, you're trash, you're going to do a great job, you will bring some peace and harmony, but you're trash, you're trash. And then he has a long sermon about Joseph. I'm sorry, and that's not funny, but like, it's just like everybody, he's like saying like, nope, 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 nope. And then Joseph has this long sermon and how wonderful he is and all of this stuff. It's really like cutthroat, but he's also telling it honestly, because like I said, at that age and just the position that Jacob was in, the veil is very thin. You know, he's just going to tell them honestly how it is, how they've been, how they will be, and he has all this messaging from the Lord. And of course, you know, some things can be like a little misleading and like off-put, but at the end of the day, he's being the father of the household. So he says, cursed to be their anger. He's talking about two sons here. So fierce, their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel. Dan will provide justice for his people as one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites on the horse's heels so that the rider tumbles backward. Then this is just the end of Joseph's sermon. Let all these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. He says, Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey. In the evening he divides the plunder. So he's very cutthroat, but he also is using kind of like a metaphor, if you will. He's not using simile, saying like Benjamin is like a ravenous wolf. He's literally saying Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, right? Some type of metaphor here, which we'll learn hopefully more about Benjamin. But again, these are all the 12 tribes of Israel. We can go through each one. I would encourage everybody to go through each one and see like what what Jacob says about each one, because they're just so funny. Not funny, but like it just like, you know, if I heard that as his son, I would be like, damn, unless I was one of the better tribes, right? But again, this is like really like the foundations of our nation. Like these 12 tribes really started pretty much a lot of people here on earth. So it's interesting. Some of them kind of stopped, right, because they wouldn't have any success, so then some of them just kept going. But in Exodus, we're going to go ahead and name all of the 12 tribes. So I will open up Exodus with that, just so you have an understanding at least who they were. And see if anyone sticks out to you. We'll get to that in Exodus. But we're almost done with this. One more nose itch. Oh, goodness gracious. And evening and morning devoured the plunder. Okay. Benjamin is the ravenous wolf. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said to them when he blessed them, giving each of them a blessing appropriate to him. And as we know, these blessings, some of them were nice, some of them were just like very cutthroat. But anyways, Joseph went up to bury his father. All Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, the dignitaries of his court and the dignitaries of Egypt. So Joseph had a huge procession, whatever it is called, a huge gathering of people that went to bury him. Everybody in Egypt, everybody. It was pretty wild. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers and the sins and wrongs they have committed in treating you so badly. Now, please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." And when their message came to him, Joseph wept. Because they're feeling already down in the dumps. You know, they received this great blessing, and then they're worried. They're like, oh no, we're POSs. What is Joseph going to do? But Joseph at that time just had a lot of compassion and heart for them. So he said, "So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. So yes, he was very forgiving, and he said, regardless of anything that happened, I'm still going to be the best person that I can be and provide for you as long as I can. Joseph stayed in Egypt along with his father's family, and he lived 110 years. And he saw a third generation of Ephraim's children. Also the children of Machir, sons of Manasseh, were placed at birth on Joseph's knees. And that is the wrap it up, you guys. So we heard about Jacob's death, and then Joseph had died as well. But of course, even the Bible itself skips a bunch of things that happened. There were a lot of things that happened in between, Jacob's death and Joseph's death, but it just jumps right to it. That's life, right? You're gonna have to watch the movie at a different time. You're gonna have to watch the movie of the Bible, right? The cannot. Sorry, it's just, yeah. You're gonna have to watch just how it goes. Ask God to go ahead and show you it in a dream, or later on you're going to see how it happened, start to finish. Very, very enticing and awesome. Anyways, beautiful. Joseph lived 110, a little bit younger than his father, but he did see his great-grandchildren. He saw his kids, he saw his kids. Maybe not. He said, well, a third generation of Ephraim's children, so his great-grandchildren on Ephraim's side, and he also saw his grandchildren from Manasseh. So, wonderful, beautiful, guys. I'm just going to go ahead and scratch the nose off my face and have a good rest of my Sunday. I will probably do a little bit more writing for Exodus, and I hope you enjoyed the book of Genesis. That was part 12. That was it. We're moving on to the next, just like that. Have a great day and enjoy your Sunday. Bye-bye.